Let us begin with a question that your conscious mind may not dare to ask. Yet your soul has whispered in countless moments of fatigue, why do you feel exhausted by people who claim to need you, and yet leave you emptier each time you give? This is no trivial sentiment, nor is it mere social complaint. It is a phenomenon rooted deep in the architecture of the psyche, a hidden transaction between souls that often goes unnoticed by the intellect, but is felt viscerally by the intuitive. I speak now to the intuitive few, the porous ones, the soul empaths, whose spiritual membrane is thin, not weak, but translucent, exposed to the pain of others, as if it were their own. You absorb pain that does not belong to you, and you know it. It begins quietly. A friend sobs, and your body tenses, a stronger mourns, and your heart bleeds. You are told this is compassion. You are told to open, to feel, to care. And while empathy is indeed the bridge between separated selves, it can become a prison when it crosses the threshold into unconscious identification. When the ego, fragile and untethered, merges too eagerly with the suffering of another, you begin to lose track of what is yours and what is not. You cease to differentiate, and therefore you cease to individuate. And this is the great danger. You see, the emotional vampire is not always a monster in disguise. Often it is the wounded child in the adult body, begging for love in ways that no longer serve mutual growth. And sometimes it is your own archetypal shadow projected into another's form that draws you in to relive your unresolved myth. We must not be naive in our compassion. The unconscious does not care for your politeness. It seeks balance through psychic law. And if you continue to carry the sorrows of others, it will demand compensation through anxiety, fatigue, depression, or illness. The ancient mystics knew this. They spoke not only of the devil without, but the draining spirit within. In alchemy, this is nigredo, the blackening, the descent into chaos that precedes transformation. When you are drained by another, it is not always because they are evil, but because they are undeveloped and you have made yourself their vessel, like a chalice left open in the storm. You have filled with waters, not drawn from your own sacred well. You must learn to close the vessel without guilt. Let me speak of symbols. For the unconscious speaks in images. Picture this. A woman dreams she is in a room filled with mirrors. Each mirror reflects not her face, but the twisted expressions of people from her past lovers, parents, strangers. She wakes sobbing, confused. The dream reveals her psychic state. She has become a reflector of others' pain, but can no longer find her own image. The self has become a repository. There is no center. This is what happens to the over-attuned. They become like psychic sponges, soaking up every drop of sorrow until they are too saturated to recognize their own waters. In this condition, they mistake empathy for sacrifice, and sacrifice for virtue. But remember, this self-abandonment is not sanctity. Christ carried the sins of the world because he was prepared. You are not Christ, nor are you required to bleed for every soul who cannot hold their own wounds. The emotional vampire thrives not because he is malevolent, but because he is unconscious, he is fragmented, he seeks wholeness in others. He reaches for your energy because he has not discovered his own, and if you are not anchored in your own center, you will offer it to him under the guise of love. But true love does not demand your depletion. It offers light without extinguishing the flame. Now let us enter the deeper waters, where psychic possession begins. When you absorb another's pain without boundaries, you do not merely feel it, you internalize it. Their complexes infiltrate your psyche, their projections bind themselves to your aura. You begin to think their thoughts, feel their wounds, dream their fears. This is not empathy. This is enmeshment. This is soul invasion. In psychological terms, this is a collapse of the boundary between ego and other, a blurring that invites emotional contagion. In mystical terms, it is a kind of spiritual parasitism. Though rarely intentional, the vampire does not always know he feeds. He simply feels relief when you are near. You become his medicine. And then his addiction, and you, driven by a messianic complex or a need for approval, confuse this dynamic for meaning. But meaning does not arise from martyrdom. It arises from transformation. To protect oneself is not selfish, it is sacred. The boundary is not a wall, it is a gate. You must decide what passes through. The unconscious does not differentiate between what is noble and what is naive. It responds only to archetypal law. Energy must flow, but it must flow with awareness. Otherwise, it festers. Have you ever wondered why some people leave you feeling heavy? Even after a brief encounter, why your dreams become clouded with foreign voices? Why your heart carries sorrows that have no name? You are not broken. You are absorbing, and until you become conscious of this, you will continue to walk through life like a psychic sieve, open to all, known to none. Now, let us turn inward. Recall a moment, perhaps recent, when someone poured their pain into you, not through honest sharing, but through unconscious dumping. Did they ask for your insight, or did they simply empty their darkness into your light? Did they leave lighter while you staggered under the weight of emotions that were never yours? This is the essence of the dynamic. Not conversation, but transference. Not intimacy, but energetic colonization, and you must reclaim your sovereignty. The path forward is not harsh rejection, but conscious containment. You must learn the language of the psyche, its symbols, its rhythms, its whispers. When your chest tightens in a room, ask what energy has entered. When your dreams fill with strangers, ask which archetype has been invoked. When your body grows weary, ask who you've been carrying. These are not esoteric indulgences. They are survival tools for the intuitive. To be intuitive is to be sensitive to the invisible, but sensitivity without discernment leads to collapse. The medium who opens a channel without grounding becomes lost in astral static. The healer who absorbs every ailment becomes the patient, and the lover who gives without boundaries becomes the ghost of their former self. You must become the alchemist of your own soul. You must transform absorption into awareness, empathy into wisdom. Do not deny your gift, but do not let it destroy you. The world needs your light, but only if it shines from within, not from the ashes of your burnout. Let this be the beginning of your awakening. But there is something even more insidious than the overt vampire, the subtle, unconscious feeder, who does not know that they are feeding, and perhaps more troubling still, you might discover that at times you have become such a vessel. The unconscious does not distinguish between victim and thief when both are bound by unprocessed wounds. Emotional vampirism, in its shadow form, is often unintentional. It arises from the desperate cry of the soul for meaning, for warmth, for containment. A person who has lost their connection to their inner fire will, by necessity, reach for yours. Not because they wish to destroy you, but because your flame reminds them that they are cold. Their hunger speaks a language of envy cloaked as admiration, of perpetual crisis that demands your rescue, and you, the one attuned to subtle frequencies, mistake this for a call to compassion. But let me warn you, this is where the danger lies. The archetype of the wounded healer lives within many of you. You wish to help, to heal, to be the answer. But if you are not conscious of the boundaries between self and other, this noble impulse becomes your noose. You walk into other people's underworlds with no guide rope tied to your own soul. You drown in their pain and call it empathy. That is not empathy, it is enmeshment. Empathy honors another's suffering without becoming enslaved by it. Enmeshment is a loss of boundaries so total that your psyche begins to dissolve into theirs. It is a merging that masquerades as love, but is, in fact, a profound confusion of identities. In such moments, you cease to know where you end, and they begin. This is not spiritual virtue, it is psychological possession. The ancient alchemists knew this dilemma well. They spoke in cryptic language of solvet coagula, to dissolve and to bind, to dissolve the egoic limitations. Yes, but not to the point of fragmentation. Coagula was the necessary integration of bringing things together in wholeness. The emotional vampire draws you into solve, but resists the coagula. They wish to dissolve you, but they cannot integrate the gift you bring. And so you are left empty, haunted, drained. You wonder why you feel despair after their presence. You feel confusion, self-doubt, physical exhaustion. These are not coincidences. These are messages from your psyche that a boundary has been breached. Dreams often illustrate this with terrible clarity. I have seen in dream work countless visions of dark rooms, figures with no faces, shadows that lean in too close, serpents speaking in tongues. These are symbols that your unconscious is screaming, this pain is not yours, and yet you carry it. One patient dreamt of a wolf with human eyes who spoke in her father's voice, but wore her ex-lover's jacket. It begged to enter her home, promised the peace, but once inside, stole the fire from her hearth. This is the vampiric archetype, the deceiver cloaked in the familiar, the one who whispers through voices you trust, only to rob you of your inner warmth. How, then, do we protect ourselves without becoming cold, cynical, armored? This is the paradox. The answer is not to shut down emotionally, but to learn the sacred art of discernment. The intuitive soul must learn to listen not only to others' pain, but also to their own gut response. That feeling in your chest, when someone's presence makes your heart race not in excitement, but in anxiety, that heaviness after a conversation, that subtle resentment that builds when your giving is never matched by receiving, these are somatic symbols. As potet, as dream images, the body speaks the truth, the mind is afraid to utter. And to those who are intuitive, your greatest enemy is not the narcissist, the manipulator, the predator. It is your own belief that love must hurt. Somewhere in your unconscious lies a belief that says, if I suffer, I prove my love. This is a relic from childhood. The child who had to overfunction emotionally for parents who underfunctioned, the child who became the therapist to their wounded mother, the peacekeeper for a raging father. That child learned that to be safe and to be needed, they must abandon their own needs. This is the root of unconscious absorption, the false virtue of martyrdom. True individuation demands that we reclaim what was sacrificed on the altar of peacekeeping. You must descend into your own unconscious and retrieve the gold you buried beneath other people's pain. It will not be easy. You will feel guilt. You will feel as if you are abandoning others. But you are not. You are returning to yourself. And only from the self can true healing flow. You cannot offer light if your wick has burned to ash. And so I invite you, those who feel everything, who carry too much pause, step back, turn inward. Ask not what does this person need from me, but what part of me is attracting this pain. The vampire does not appear by accident. They are drawn to unresolved guilt, to unhealed wounds, to the open seams of your psyche. Heal those, and they will find no purchase in your spirit. And in that, you are not cruel, you are free. Let us continue in the next part of this exploration. Now let me take you deeper still into the collective roots of this phenomenon. For emotional vampirism is not merely a personal ailment, it is a collective neurosis. We live in a time where the spiritual architecture of the soul has been abandoned, and in its place we have erected a culture of chronic projection. People no longer seek to know themselves, they seek others to carry what they dare not face. The emotional vampire is often the uninitiated soul, terrified of their own shadow. They feel the inner chaos and do not descend into it. Instead, they extend a psychic hand into your well, drawing up your clarity to drink from. Projection is the fundamental mechanism. You feel the pull, not because you are weak, but because you are open. But openness without discernment is not wisdom, it is a vulnerability disguised as virtue. Many empaths and intuitives believe their gift is merely to feel more, but the true gift is not a reception of pain. The true gift is the capacity to transform what is felt, but transformation cannot occur without separation. You must distinguish between what is yours and what is theirs. This is the first movement of the alchemical process, separation before union. You see, what is not yours cannot be healed by you. You may absorb their sadness, but it will only rot within you. You may take on their rage, but it will ferment into your self-loathing. You may even succeed in silencing their anxiety for a time, but it will echo in your bones like a sorrow that cannot name itself. And one day, you will awaken and not recognize your own reflection. For your soul will have become a mosaic of other people's sorrows. This is not compassion, it is possession by the collective unconscious. The ancients understood the need for psychic hygiene. The shaman did not enter the world of the spirits without cleansing rituals. The oracle did not receive visions without first entering a trance state that preserved her from invasion. In our modern world, the intuitive does none of this. You answer the phone while bleeding energetically. You scroll through the despair of the masses without armor. You open your psyche daily to the world's pain with no anchor, no boundary, no ritual to protect the sanctity of your soul. And then you wonder why you feel lost, scattered, hollow. But it is not too late to change this. The path forward is one of radical sovereignty, not isolation, but integration. To be sovereign means to be centered in the self, not controlled by outer forces. It means you can stand in the presence of another's suffering without being seduced into absorbing it. It means you can hold space without becoming the container. And above all, it means you must recover the sacred right to say no. Many of you fear this word. You believe that to say no is to be cruel. But the soul does not thrive on endless yes. The tree thrives because it knows where it ends. It does not absorb the entire forest. It receives light, drinks water, gives shade, and yet remains itself. You must do the same. Begin to notice, when do you say yes while your body says no? When do you feel the pull to rescue, when in truth you are barely breathing? When do you feel guilt for setting limits with those who take more than they give? These are the signals that you are living through a false self, the persona of the helper, the healer, the good one. But behind that persona is a soul screaming for its own restoration. The vampires do not need you to be holy. They need you to be unaware. For once you become conscious of the transaction, you are no longer food. You are flame. And flame cannot be consumed. I want you to think now of someone who drains you. Visualize them. Hear their voice. Feel what happens in your chest. Your root of your shoulders. When they enter your awareness, that tension, that dread, that grief that is your unconscious speaking, it is telling you, this is not neutral, this is not sacred, this is theft. And the greatest theft is not of your energy, it is of your time on earth. Every moment spent carrying what is not yours is a moment not lived in your destiny. Your destiny is too sacred to be auctioned to those who cannot carry their own wounds. And let us not make enemies of these souls. They are not demons. They are merely afraid. But you are not here to be their mother. You are not here to be their savior. You are here to become whole. And when you become whole, truly whole, you will know who to hold and who to release. You will discern not from fear, but from clarity. You will not absorb their pain, because you have faced your own. You will not flinch at their sorrow, for you have transmuted your grief into gold. You will not be drained by their hunger, for you have fed yourself first. This is individuation, not escape from the world, but a right relationship with it. The danger lies not merely in the vampire, but in the wound within you that invites them. Yes, there is a resonance. Somewhere long ago, you learned that your value lay in being the sponge for others' suffering. Perhaps it was the depressed mother whose silence you tried to fill with your laughter. Perhaps it was the father who raged And you learned that if you were good enough, quiet enough, intuitive enough, you could calm the storm. That child still lives within you. And that child is the door through which the vampire walks. Do not shame this part of yourself. It loved fiercely. It wanted safety, belonging, connection. But what once protected you is now what endangers your soul. The psychic strategy must now become conscious. The wound must be witnessed. You must return to the scene, not to relive it, but to reclaim yourself from it. This is why you keep absorbing pain that isn't yours. It echoes the familiar, it calls to the unfinished story. You do not take on their sadness because it is noble. You take it on because it mirrors something unresolved. And in the silence of that exchange, a hidden hope is born. If I can heal them, maybe I will finally feel whole. But healing does not work that way. You cannot use others as proxies for your own inner child. You cannot alchemize your past by endlessly giving your future to the wounded. You must turn inward, not in retreat, but in revelation. You must find the part of you that believes love must hurt, the part that trusts pain more than peace, the part that feels guilt when joy arrives. This, too, is shadow, and until it is integrated, you will continue to find yourself entangled in emotional labyrinths that are not yours to solve. Some of you feel that to pull back is abandonment, that to shield your energy is to betray your gift. But I tell you this, your gift is not in suffering. Your gift is in clarity, insight, in the ability to discern where energy flows and where it is drained. You are not betraying anyone by protecting your field. You are not failing anyone by refusing to bleed for them. In fact, it is only from the place of containment that you can truly serve. I have seen this countless times in dreams. The dreamer is being chased, drained, overwhelmed until they turn and face the entity. And in that turning, a metamorphosis occurs. The monster becomes a child, the vampire becomes the mirror. You see, what we fear is often just what we have disowned. When you become conscious of your own unhealed need, the other loses their power over you. They may still rage, they may still plead, but you will no longer be hooked. The psychic contract dissolves. Do not expect applause for this transformation. Some will call you selfish, others will accuse you of being cold, but they are speaking from the voice of their own unmet needs. It is not your responsibility to be understood by those who benefit from your unconsciousness. It is your responsibility to awaken, even if you walk alone for a time. Walk with integrity. Let us speak now of the dream world, for it often reveals what waking life obscures. I once worked with a man who dreamt of carrying a withered woman on his back every night. She whispered into his ear, telling him what to do, what to say, who to be. In the dream, he could never see her face. He would wake in sweat, anxious and drained. In our work together, we discovered this woman was an archetype, the devouring anima, unintegrated and projected. She was not evil. She was abandoned. She was the feminine within him, distorted by years of rejection, maternal neglect, and shame around feeling, his task was not to kill her, but to turn and see her, to give her a place not on his back, but in his awareness. After that, the dreams changed. The woman sat beside him, then across from him. Then one night she walked away, and he woke up refreshed. You see, when we befriend the archetype, we no longer need to act it out. When you face the vampire in your psyche, you stop attracting them into your life, because the external is only the echo of the internal. Emotional vampires do not always come in cloaks. They may smile sweetly, they may speak the language of healing, but the signature is the same. You leave the encounter feeling less than you were. Not because you gave too much, but because you gave from emptiness. And so you must cultivate the opposite inner fullness, not perfection, not egoic self-importance, but the fullness that comes from knowing your energy is your responsibility, that your time is holy, that your soul is not a dumpster for unresolved trauma. No matter how gentle its voice, even the kindest wound can still bleed you. And now I ask you, will you continue absorbing what is not yours? Will you keep offering your inner sanctuary to those who have not built their own? Or will you finally close the door, light your candle, and sit with yourself not as a rescuer, not as a healer, but as one who is learning to belong to their own soul again? So then we arrive here at the edge of the inner forest, where you must decide whether to go back into the cycle of energetic martyrdom or forward into sovereignty. You must understand, the psyche is not infinite in its capacity to absorb the unconscious contents of others. When you continue to carry what is not yours, you displace the contents of your own soul. And this is the ultimate danger. Not that the other drains you, but that in being drained, you abandon yourself. Many of you do not fear exhaustion. You are used to it. What you fear is the clarity that comes after the detachment, the silence, the space where no one's feelings are louder than your own, because in that space, you will finally hear yourself. And what you hear may not be gentle. It may be rage. It may be grief. It may be the scream you silence to keep the peace. But that voice is yours. And it is sacred. The truth is, you have mistaken absorption for connection, but the two are not the same. To absorb someone's chaos is not to love them. To feel everything they feel is not to be bonded. It is to be merged. And merging, unchecked, is a regression into psychic enmeshment. The self becomes blurry. The boundaries dissolve. The ego, instead of becoming translucent, becomes invisible. This is the fate of many gifted empaths who do not individuate. Their gift becomes their curse. Their insight becomes intrusion. They touch souls they are not meant to carry. They live in other people's mirrors and forget the shape of their own face. You must now return to the sacred center. What is yours to hold? What is not? This is the work. Discernment is the blade you must wield. Not to cut others out, but to cut through illusion, through projection, through trauma-bonded compassion that masquerades as empathy. Empathy must be rooted in consciousness, or else it becomes collusion. Ask yourself this deeply when you offer your energy to someone in pain. Are you doing it from fullness or from fear? Are you giving because it is true, or because you are afraid they will leave if you don't, because you fear they will break if you do not hold them, or because secretly you are terrified of being abandoned unless you remain necessary. This is hard truth. But you did not come here for comfort. You came for awakening. Let me tell you now, your presence is not meant to be an endless sponge for the unprocessed wounds of the collective. You are not a landfill for projection. You are not a sacrificial lamb for the unloved. You are a soul in process. You are self-information. You are a vessel, yes, but that vessel must be clean, must be whole, must be protected. And I will say this clearly, some people will never heal because their wound has become their identity. If you keep pouring your life into them, you do not save them. You only sink with them. This is not cruelty. This is clarity. You can bless someone from afar. You can love them without letting them in. You can release them into their own karmic unfolding because you do not control their destiny. You only sabotage your own when you mistake being needed for being loved. One final vision, a dream I once interpreted for a woman who came to me, exhausted and broken from years of healing others. In her dream, she was in a cathedral made of glass. She was pouring water from a sacred jug into the mouths of the sick, but the jug never emptied. And yet, with every pour, she grew paler, more translucent, less visible, until in the final frame, she disappeared entirely. The people were quenched, but she was gone. She wept. Why did I vanish? She asked. I told her, because you never drank from your own cup. So I say to you now, drink, reclaim your energy. Call your spirit back. Sit in the silence that arises when you stop managing the pain of others. There, you will meet a strange new joy, one that does not come from being useful, but from simply being. And from that place you may find the energy to create, to love, to heal, without being consumed. You may discover that the truest form of empathy is not absorption, but presence. And that presence begins when you stop abandoning yourself. You who feel everything you are, not here to be broken by the world, you are here to learn how to stay whole within it. The vampires will knock, the old patterns will whisper, but now, you know, and what you know, consciously, cannot destroy you. It can only transform you. The truth is no longer the threat, it is the sword. Now go, protect your soul, reclaim your energy, and above all, become visible again. For the world does not need more absorbers of pain. It needs more awakened souls who know who they are and who they are not.